today we are going to have a great panel talking about marketing and also a little bit sales alignment. And we will and it's great because it's, I would say, female only panel. Well, I won't consider myself in the panel. And we have three great speakers. So please welcome on stage Ginny Lobel from Toucan, Sarah Whipp from Spendesk, and Anastasia Gaidai from Influ2. I hope I spell your name correctly. Let's do that. Okay, so maybe to start with, if you want to introduce yourself and explain what's your company and what you're doing there.
Sure. I'll go first. Can you hear me? Hi, I'm Ginny Lobel. I'm the CMO of Toucan. We are a customer-facing analytics platform, so think of it like putting analytics in your product so your customers can see the analytics that they need.
Hi, my name is... Can you hear me? Hello. Hi, everyone. I'm Anastasia. I'm Senior Account Executive at Influ2. You might think what I'm doing, I'm on the marketing gurus at the Demand Gen session panel. Well, first of all, our sales and marketing efforts are closely aligned, so I thought I'd bring in a sales perspective, not in terms of what marketing should be doing, but in terms of how we can collaborate in order to achieve better results. But also, our product is a person-based advertising platform that empowers marketers better support sales through a more targeted approach. And I talk to CMOs every day, and I thought that I could bring in some experience that they're sharing, their pains and the ways how they approach solutions to those challenges. So yeah, if there is the right moment to share those, I'll be happy to do so.
Fantastic. Hi, I'm Sarah Whipp. It's nice to meet you all. I'm CMO at Spendesk. We're the spend management platform covering everything from cards, expenses, travel, invoices, etc. I've got a wide variety of experience. I've worked as a first marketing person all the way up to leading large marketing organizations such as S&P Global, Symantec, McAfee. So I'm really excited to be able to learn from the other panelists and share some perspectives.
Thank you. So maybe to start with, well, very quick answer. Give us a little bit more of context about what kind of customers do you have, what size they are, and maybe also if you can share some numbers like your CAC or, well, because I think it's important to understand the demand gen, because if you are targeting like B2C, well, if you are here, it's not B2C, but let's say prosumer, you won't have access to the same channel than if you are targeting enterprise. So maybe if you can, each of you, give us more context.
Oh, I can start again? Sure. Hi. So we target SaaS companies, obviously, and they range, in size from very small to quite large. I would say, our ACV starts as low as 20-ish, and is probably averages around 40, and it differs across regions
per
as
month,
well.
Per year?
Oh, per year, sorry, 40,000, yes. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, we are obviously in B2B as well. So I would say our sweet spot are software companies, but we also have clients in other industries like manufacturing, travel, and so on. We do have successful clients that are both startups and enterprise. I would say that it all comes down to, well, the level of maturity of their sales and marketing alignment, their processes, collaborative efforts, rather than anything else. Our average ACV is about 80K US, and I would say when talking about CAC, it's ratio-wise, I would say it's 1 to 5 CAC to LTV.
Fantastic. So we're a little bit different in that we're completely vertical agnostic. Everybody spends, right? So we work across all verticals, but where our sweet spot is really 50 to 250 users, where there's a finance department already in place. We do have a freemium solution, so we go down to the startups growing up. And we make money in two ways. One is through our cards that we've got, and the other is through software. So it's a balance, and it's on a transaction rather than a user basis. So we would tend to measure on MRR per account, and that tends to be about 1,500 to start off with, and rise up. Although with a freemium product, it starts with 0, which presents a lot of great opportunities in terms of PLG motion.
Great. And how do you spend your marketing budget? Basically, what's your main channel? And I would say right now, and maybe later we will talk about, I would say the impact of the COVID or the latest events.
That is a loaded question. Marketing budgets are getting tighter and tighter, obviously, especially in tech. So I would say, it's tricky if you find a channel that works really well. You don't want to throw all your eggs in one basket, because what happens is you saturate one, and then all of a sudden your demand across just it starts to dwindle. So we spread our budget across.
Sorry, have you already saturated some channels?
I mean, they change, right? I mean, first, I would say, sure, not fully saturated, but
Which
saturated enough. So we outsource some BDR type motions, which I would say is in the US specifically, which is like, it's doing okay. It was great for a minute, and then all of a sudden it just started to go down. And I would say other channels that I've seen start to go down a bit more, sometimes LinkedIn, if you spend a little too much and you don't have enough sort of support across other channels, like a true ABM motion, that can be a bit saturated. So yeah, I've saturated a few for sure.
And if we come back to the original question,
Sure, yeah.
so what's your main channels or spend?
Right. So I would say our best channels actually are, we do a lot of digital, sort of general digital in motion with an ABM campaign, and we do LinkedIn, sort of general digital platforms like Rollworks, things like that. And then I would say Google Ads weirdly works really well. So yeah, we spend a fair amount on Google Ads as well.
Yeah, we drink our own champagne, so we use our own technology, the technology that allows us to target specific people through ads. So I would say paid ads is our primary marketing channel. I would just mention that it is always closely aligned with what our sales outbound team is doing. So it's always both teams going after same accounts, same people, just through different channels. So that's why I think, yes, paid social is super important, but all the channels greatly complement each other. So I would say we show ads to the people that we send LinkedIn requests to and send email sequences to. So it's always a joint effort. So I mean, you can call it ABM, you can call it just joint sales and marketing effort, but essentially that's our primary marketing channel in combined with sales.
So annoyingly, I'm going to agree with both of you. Yes, I think you can get saturations with things like LinkedIn, particularly if you're focusing in the funnel rather than at the top of the funnel. And I think that's kind of an important differentiation of understanding what channels work best at which stage within the funnel. And you're right, it is about making sure that there's a mix and having joint sales and marketing work together. From our perspective, we are in a very search term heavy industry, and we're trying to break free from that because it feels like ourselves as a first mover, and then our competitors have all started moving into branded search terms in too big a way, which means we've almost saturated the market for ourselves, which I've got to say, being quite new to this industry, is quite a new situation for me, and we're working quite heavily with Google on that to see how we can move the market into talking more around thought leadership and getting those search terms, because otherwise it's going to be, frankly, a battle to the bottom.
And how much does it cost to advertise on your market? Because it should be crazy, no? Yeah.
Sorry, could you repeat?
How much is it to advertise on your market?
It depending on the terms, yeah, it can get very, very, very expensive. In France, with the £800 gorilla, is American terminology. So everybody's bidding against our search term. In other markets, Spain and Italy, where we're just entering, then we're bidding on other markets. So it depends on who's the largest and really, frankly, budgets that are going into each market.
You talked about, I would say, having multiple touch points with your client. Do you have any marketing attribution system? I know that it's well, it's something that, well, I've never heard of a solution that works properly. Do you have any magic trick or something?
I really like Bizible. We don't have it at Toucan, but I've used it in previous companies. It's owned by Marketo, owned by Adobe. It's like the acquisition, whatever, train. But it works really well. You can do custom attribution models and things like that. I really like that tool. It's been a few years since I've used it, so maybe it's not as good as it used to be. But it was great, when I was using it, for sure.
I'd say overall marketing attribution is a bit tricky, and that's something I hear about every day from marketeers. And I think what we do in our team as well is we measure the impact, like whether certain accounts were touched or not touched by certain initiatives, and then we see what worked well, what did not work well. But eventually, the ultimate goal is, okay, are we generating enough pipeline? Are we generating enough revenue? And then breaking it down. So it's not because like first touch attribution, last touch, it's all connected, and yeah, it's about more measuring impact rather than anything else these days, I think.
Well, I'm a little bit frustrated because I thought one of you would have the answer, and I was looking across at my colleague Safi going, write it down. So no, we do need to get to that point. What we have seen, though, is where we've been under pressure from our finance teams to reduce perhaps brand awareness on something like social media. Our demand dollars have to work a lot harder. And so we are looking for that holy grail. If there's any entrepreneurs out there that have an attribution system, then please contact me, because we need to get that balance right. And it's not so much it's about understanding where to invest to be able to move the market in different directions. And as you can imagine, like all of you, I'm in a lot of WhatsApp groups, and the questions and discussions remain the same. What is that holy grail, right?
Right. For the last 25 years since I've been in marketing.
Talking about the market moving, there were some, I would say, big events in the last 3 years. I'm thinking about the pandemic. I'm thinking about the war, and now the crisis. And I guess that it impacts your different, your demand generation. You mentioned the budget reduction, but I would say there were some channels that maybe worked and didn't work anymore, and maybe are back. I'm thinking about, for example, the events.
Obviously, yeah.
So can you tell us the impact of this?
So for me, in my personal experience, so when the pandemic hit, I was at a different startup, and it was the channels that were working great just totally stopped, and the ones that were not working before the pandemic all of a sudden were their best channel. And specifically, it was about Google ads. All of a sudden just was through the roof. And you think, it's Google ads. Like, why would that work for a B2B software solution? It makes no sense. You know what I mean? It's like very transactional. This is not a transactional product, but it just started working. And you were talking about how channels change during the pandemic. Like I look at things at a monthly and quarterly basis, certainly still, but at the time I was looking at a week because it would change every minute. It was very strange. I'd never experienced that before in my career. And so now I would say the obvious one's events, right? Because you stopped going to in-person events and you started doing webinars, and you could watch people just get so sick of webinars over about a year and a half. And it would be like, you'd get 300 people registered for a webinar, and then it would be like, and you had 30. And it was the same sort of strategy, same amount of money we spent. But now, obviously, in-person events are back. And to me, depending on the region, is always the most successful, particularly in Europe. I feel like in-person events really work.
Yeah, I feel that we as a company in Flutu we greatly benefited from COVID because more and more teams got more digitalized in their efforts. So there were these budgets and with all the events, and these days at that time sales folks couldn't jump on planes and go take those personal meetings, and still you needed to generate that awareness, you needed to build those relationships. So marketing teams were looking for other ways how to reach those prospects digitally. So definitely ads became paid ads has become a great channel for everyone. But also, what I think I want to talk about the trend is, in the last year, we've seen huge shifts in how we approach our ICP. Because about a year ago, when with the current economy. We had much broader ICP, and we noticed that while we were generating a decent amount of pipeline, it was not converting to revenue that well. So when we evaluated everything, we realized that we need to, and obviously we realized that software industry got hit crazily, like that sweet spot of ours. So we need to be more precise with our ICP, with our efforts. So now, for example, we're generating less meetings, but they convert much better. Like we analyzed it within the last year, that lesser number of meetings convert 40% better into actual revenue. So I think, yeah, also these conditions, they make marketers be a bit more precise with their efforts. So rather than doing sort of spray and pray and doing more of awareness, concentrate on something that actually brings revenue to the company. And we went through that as well. And
I would say that's a little bit of a double-edged sword, though, because we were just talking about this, you don't want to cut all your brand, because that's just never a good move, because it's tempting, right? You're like, oh, this is the channel that's working. I'm going to put all my money in there. It's just not the way it works. So you just got to be a little careful about where you're spending your money and where you're cutting it.
yeah, and it's maybe less, you might use the same channels. I guess I was referring more towards the audience that you go after through on those channels.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah,
Totally.
in order to then get better results.
Agreed, yeah, agreed.
So I guess I'll take those opportunities that you threw at us. And I'm going to raise you one, which is generative AI, right? We've got that gift that's hit us all in the market as well. The thing that remains the same throughout is the value of the content you're providing to your customer. And if you don't get that right, if you don't focus on making sure about the quality, understanding the customer needs, adding value to them, no channel will work. And I think that's really what's taught me in the last 3 years. And that goes into AI as well. It's a great help, but it's not a replacement for original thought.
How do you use it right now?
We use, well, actually, I'm going to talk about it in a previous company because I'm fairly new to this one. So where we used it is in several ways. Actually, our best way of using it was as a competitive intel tool.
Really?
Yeah, because if you want to know how your brand's perceived, ask what's your benefit
Ask
compared to a
AI.
competitor. Because what they're going to do is trawl the internet and say, this is how the internet as a whole views your brand, views your competitor's brand, views the strengths. It's a fantastic competitive tool to be able to inform actually how your message is looking in the market.
It's not live, but yeah. Well, there are some live.
It's an aggregate, right, of what's been there historically. So no, you're right, it won't move that quickly, but it's a fantastic starting point. And I think it's a great questioning area. For me, it's been the most powerful, particularly internally, when you're saying our brand is perceived X, Y, Z, or our message, and people say, well, no, that's not true. You can either spend a fortune on research, or you can ask AI, right, ChatGPT, and it tells you, and you've got some stats.
Have you tried ever all the usage of generative AI for demand gen?
I was going to say, have I tried for Taylor Swift songs? Yes. But yeah, but apparently she didn't like it. No, not for demand gen. I think, and this is probably my own mental block I've got to get over, this original thought of really understanding and tailoring to needs. I think, again, it can be a good brief, it can get you started, but it doesn't, it's not that sophisticated yet. So for me, yes, as a starting point, but I would never, I don't know if, sorry, probably an aside, but it's a fantastic court case where a solicitor prepared their brief just on AI, and the AI had made up cases. He lost his case, he got thrown out of court. You've got to be careful, you can't just take it as, like sat-nav, right? You can't just blindly follow. You do have to look at road signs. It's the same thing. It won't replace.
Yeah, we use it for SEO, for content, obviously, which I feel like most marketers are doing right now. But I agree. You think that it's going to be perfect, and you're like, oh, this is interesting. It's a great writer. It's just sometimes wrong. so you have to kind of actually have an expert going through it and making sure that's okay.
And the idea behind using generative AI for SEO is just to increase the volume of articles that you can produce every week.
So yes, it's certainly volume, but it's also about being able to know how to prompt it correctly. So you can say, write me 500 words on the analytics industry, and it'll give you something. And then you have to ask like 2 or 3 more follow-ups. So I will say, like, I've asked it about us, and it's just wrong, like our space. And I was like, this is just wrong. Like, I'm like, I'm either totally wrong or this is totally wrong. I'm pretty sure I'm right. So yeah.
Have you tried?
I don't think that we use AI for demand gen, but I do agree that we heavily use personalization. So, for example, for SEO, when we look at high intent, let's say keywords, right, we then make sure that the landing is highly personalized to what the person is trying to find. I mean, of course, it could be as obvious as whether they're looking for a certain competitor and what our benefits are, to something as simple as, are they looking for an ABM product or ABM solution, in order to speak the same language, in order to resonate with them at all the different levels.
Well, all of you are working in different markets in Europe, but also in the US, well, internationally. How do you, adapt your demand gen? So I get that it's not the same cost and you're not access to the same channels. How do you manage that?
Well, it's dramatically different for a Toucan. So what works in Europe does not work in the US. So I will say, yeah, I mean, it's just completely different. So I was actually surprised how totally different it was. Like in my experience, I've worked obviously lots of international companies, and it was always like, well, it's roughly the same. Maybe you do a few more events in Europe, but at Toucan, it's just completely different. So we just have totally different funnels, totally different analysis, because they were so dramatically different that there was no way to kind of marry them. I have to do them totally separately, which is pretty interesting. It's the first time that's ever happened.
And the cost is also completely different.
I'm sorry?
The cost?
The cost, yeah. Well, the US tends to be a lot more expensive, specifically for channels like Google Ads and things like that. So, so our cost per lead is much higher in the US, but the ACV tends to be higher as well. So it all kind of evens out.
The ratio status.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Okay. What about you?
From our perspective, so we are UK, France, Spain, Italy, Germany. Of all of them, Germany is one of the most challenging markets. It's a lot more technical. So the message that we deliver, not so much top of funnel, but within the funnel, it has to be dramatically different in terms of the proof points that we do. We work really closely with our sales team there. I think it's fairly nascent industry that we're in, so we're really learning all the time. And the biggest difference, I guess, beyond that, in terms of how people buy, are the competitors. Because we have different competitors in different markets, so we have to message differently. We have to emphasize different benefits. How
many countries do you
5.
Do you operate? 5. Okay.
I feel like overall the value that we bring to both markets is fairly the same, but historically, I think that European market, and I say that also as a person working in sales, I feel like European market needs a bit more time to ensure that you are the right vendor, that they can trust you. So you need more content that would address those needs, that some success stories in the same industry, in the same market, some content related to you being the vendor that delivers on the technology, that delivers great results.
What's your sales cycle length in Europe, maybe, and in the US?
I would say average sales cycle is about 6 months. I wouldn't say that the sales cycle dramatically differ. Well, I would say sales cycle, when we talk about geography, differs a lot, not based on the value even that much, but in Europe you have those lengthy contract reviews. I mean, we're all aware of GDPR, so that part goes much faster and smoother when it comes to closing your deals in the US. So yeah, I would say that it's a couple of months difference in Europe, roughly speaking.
And well, you just mentioned that, but if I remember correctly, when we did this prep call, you mentioned that Q4 is very specific in your industry. Yeah, it's you. So how do you how different is Q4 for you, and how do you prepare that?
Yeah, so and it's a little more pronounced, I think, in the US for Q4 being just a massive quarter in tech. So we plan our budget accordingly, right? So we call Q2 pipeline season. So you kind of put your spend where you want to build the most pipeline to close in Q4, if that makes sense. So you obviously want to spread your spend across the year, but you want to kind of front load it a little bit so that you close your year strong. So I've always done that in every SaaS company I've been in. Yeah.
You have the same.
Yeah, I mean, Q3's dead in Europe, so we don't spend that much then at all. But yeah, our sales team are, of course, they have annual quotas, so you need to make sure you get the demand in at the right time to be able to build for that. So I think it becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy in a way. I'm not certain that's whether we've taught customers to buy that way. I don't know. Sometimes I think we have, right? With the way that we do offers, we've just trained buyers that's the way it should be.
It's the end of your fiscal. You want to dump your budget?
Yeah.
Buy from us. No, I'm kidding. That's not our campaign.
We still have a few minutes. Do you have any tips, tricks, or things that you tried and worked and that you can share with the audience?
I mean, the best advice I can give and the best tip is don't expect everything to stay the same because it changes constantly. We were just having this conversation, actually, Sarah and I, which is what keeps it interesting. When you've been in marketing as long as I have, been doing this job 25 years, like it gets real boring real fast if everything stays the same. So just keep experimenting because it's always going to change, and that's what keeps it interesting.
Yeah, I agree. You certainly want to test things out, but at the same time, I think that it's more effective and more efficient when you don't test out the channel just in silos, but you see what you added to the rest of the text, the rest of the channels, because any channel, be it SEO or paid ads or webinars, if they're not aligned with the rest of the initiatives that you are doing, the results are going to be very limited. So I would say whatever it is that you do, just try to make it multi-channel and multi-functional as well, right? So that sales and marketing alignment that we talked about. So don't run your initiatives in silos. Get aligned. I think these days, for example, our SDR team, it's not under sales, it's under growth team with marketing. So they're always fully aligned with their initiatives. The same thing goes for the sales cycle. Whatever I do in my pipeline, it's fully supported by marketing. I think that's when you get the best results.
How do you organize this feedback from the sales team to the marketing for the alignment?
Great question. I'm going to talk a bit about that during my panel at like some hours ago. But yes, yeah, but it doesn't have to be manual. Like, of course, some companies, they have weekly, bi-weekly, monthly meetings when they get aligned. But for example, it could be as simple as sales team filling out their CRM, filling out certain fields in Salesforce HubSpot, and that way notifying marketing of what the needs of that accounts are, what the sales cycle is, and automatically marketing can involve those accounts into some campaigns and some initiative related to that pain point, related to that stage of the sales cycle. So it could be quite automated.
I guess two things for me. One, I'd never really understood why sales and marketing weren't aligned because it's all about the customer, right? And we're all in pursuit of the customer. And it starts with awareness and it ends with advocation. And whoever is in the best position to convert to the next stage should do it at the lowest cost. It's economics. And I think if we're having those conversations, you naturally start working together to understand who fits each stage the best for what customer type. And that's ongoing discussions with measurements, as you're saying, and learning. And then on the experimentation side of it, which I totally agree with you, it's always 70-20-10, right? It's the rule that we all know. 70% on what you know, what's working, make sure that you've got that demand center and the generation going through. 20% on some longer term projects, and 10%, I won't swear, but just to try, to learn. Because if you've got the other 90% working really well, you can afford the 10%. And if you haven't, get that 90% working and then give yourself that 10% break, because that's where the magic can happen, that's where innovation happens, and that's where you really start beating the competition and solving for customer needs.
Thank you. Well, we still have a few seconds. And I also run a podcast in French dedicated to SaaS, and usually when I end the podcast, I'm asking for, do you have any resources that you can share, books, a website, or anything that helps you in your, I would say, day-to-day job? Do you have anything to share with the audience?
One book, since continuing that sales and marketing alignment topic, just recently, I believe in July, Hillary, forgot the last name, head of IBM at Snowflake, released a book. It's called Busting Silos, where they describe literally step by step how they built out IBM, how they built out that sales and marketing alignment. I found this book fascinating, and I recommend it to everyone. Yeah.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
No.
You do.
good.
No.
I was.
Go.
We're on time. It's good. It's perfect.
If you've got one more,
No,
very shortly.
my answer was not good. It was boring, so I'm good.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.